Kenneth, can you hear me? Okay. Because I can't hear anybody else. No one's speaking, I'm assuming.
What? I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. We're just waiting on everybody else to figure it out.
Hey, man, before we get started, I want to share with you that I'm a fan of the show, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
I appreciate it, man. We're trying to make it for the people.
It is.
We're trying to really do something.
You've succeeded in doing that, man. It's a good look.
We are very cultural.
Yeah, I love that part. Yeah.
That part.
I'm gonna hit you up on LinkedIn after this, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wish I could have made it a little earlier, but you know, they were putting out some fires over here.
I hear you. I think we're live now.
Okay. All right, live on Facebook.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me? Okay. My microphone went out, so that's okay. Here we are. We're getting ready to get started. First of all, I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today for this incredible virtual masterclass as we begin to talk about diversifying the talent and leadership pipeline. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Joshua Fredenberg. And so I am not only a national speaker, author of 7 books, and president of the Circle of Change Leadership Conference, but specialize in leadership development, diversity and inclusion, retention in millennials and Generation Y. So I'm excited to be here today because we have some incredible panelists that are going to be joining us today. And while our technology is coming around, we're going to get right into this. For those of you that are unaware, the sponsor of this particular set of virtual masterclasses is the Circle of Change Leadership Conference. And really our goal is really simple. It's to help students not only discover the leader from within, but to provide them with the professional and leadership skills necessary to obtain career leadership success and ultimately the confidence to make an impact in their community, their nation, and their world. We've been doing the program for the past 10 years in LA and New York. We've reached 2,000 plus students from 159 different colleges, which is awesome. But most importantly, students have went on to do incredible things as well. So we're really happy about that. And we are continuing the momentum with our virtual conference that's going to be transpiring this November and December. It's going to be a 6-day conference. We're going to be doing all literally virtually, and it's going to be an incredible program where we have a lot of things planned. It's not going to be your normal Zoom conference. It's definitely going to have a lot of interaction and a lot of unique and different things that we're going to be doing. And so if you want more information about that, I'm going to make sure once I figure out how to get my thing to start, my mouse to start working, I'm going to figure out how to get that in the chat room as well as we get started. So without further ado, I don't want to waste any time because the reason we're here is really to hear from our wonderful panelists who have taken the time today to be part of this wonderful and this important discussion on today. So I want to just begin to take the time and begin to allow them to introduce themselves. So our first panelist is from New York City. His name is Kenneth Johnson. So Kenneth, if you can introduce yourself and answer this first question, which I shared with you beforehand. Who was the key person that helped you get to where you are today? And what was the word of wisdom they provided you that really has transformed your life? Can you hear me?
Yeah. All right, great. Joshua, thank you so very much for letting me be a part of this great panel with such an esteemed group of guests. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully I won't disappoint, right? So my name is Kenneth L. Johnson. I'm president of the Harlem-based diversity recruitment firm, East Coast Executives. Companies come to us when they're looking to add diverse talent to their recruitment pipeline. That's the piece, that's the foundation piece. Also host of a radio show in Philadelphia called the Career Seekers Show. I'm also host of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. I'm a consultant. I facilitate workshops for the Grow with Google Learning Centers in New York City and also on the on-air platform globally. So this is the work I do, right? For me, it's a two-pronged answer to your question. So of course my father was extremely important in kind of getting me to the point where I could meet a gentleman named Bernard Johnson, and he was an executive search recruiter in Philadelphia actually. And he kind of taught me the game, but I think the one consistent thing that both of them shared with me is just to not quit. Like if you're committed to it and if you want to do it, just don't give up and continue doing that. And that's just been kind of the motto throughout life. Like, get involved, stick it out, and continue to try to be true to your personal network.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Kenneth, we're so happy to have you. Thank you so much for being a part of this incredible discussion today. Our next one hails from Los Angeles, California. Been to the live conference for the past 7 years. Demetrius Harris, welcome.
What's up, Josh? I'm Demetrius Harris. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a producer at ESPN. I produce First Take. I produce The Jump. I produce Jalen and Jacoby as my everyday job, but they fly me all around the country to produce shows when they want to bring the big dog in. So that's what's up with me. I would say, my mother and my father, and I know it kind of sounds a little cliche, but they really told me, like, don't screw this up. Like, I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. There are more of my peers who are no longer with us than went to college. Mm. So I saw some very interesting things growing up. And, I always remember my mother telling me, I'm different, I'm different. And, one story that has always, stayed with me was, one day I came home from college and I was on the corner with a bunch of my friends. Some were street pharmacists and just hanging out, like I'm away, I come back and we all had white t-shirts on. And, I came back in the house and she said, you guys all look the same. When the issues arise, when the police come, when things happen, you guys all look the same. And, no one can tell the one that goes to UC Berkeley and the one that has a career path, the one that's going to do great things versus the ones who are going to be on this corner for the next, hopefully, they're here in the next 5 years, all right? And that sort of always stuck with me. And that really sort of like launched me to like never, ever, kind of go back to what I've seen, and I was fortunate, Pops was always there for me as I started to matriculate my way through the professional ranks. I've had a lot of interesting people, like Stephen A. Smith, for example, is one. And he would always say, hey, man, what you doing? Don't screw this up. For whatever reason, people would always say, don't screw this up to me. I don't know why, but they would always say that. And so, from my parents to people like Stephen A. Smith to, other people, one person in particular, name is Dave Roberts. He runs First Take and he runs the 6 o'clock Sports Center. They always have kind of, supported me and been behind me and, always made me sort of like not give up, and that's always been kind of important to me.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much, Dee, for coming on the virtual masterclass today. Our next one is Crystle Johnson. She's CEO and founder of Meaningful. Crystle, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time. Please let us know more about what you do and all that wonderful stuff.
Thank you so much. I really don't know how to follow Demetrius, but I'm going to try my best. So, hi, everyone. My name is Crystle Johnson. As mentioned before, I'm the founder and CEO of Meaningful. Meaningful exists to ensure that Black and brown women have the tools and resources they need to navigate, grow, and thrive in corporate spaces that obviously historically are predominantly white spaces. As my day job, I am an inclusion and diversity consultant in gaming. And if I think about the person or people who inspired me in my life, I am a first generation college graduate, professional. So my parents were amazing. They wanted me to do great, but all they knew was go to school, get good grades, get a job. That's really all that they knew. But one person that stands out for me is this Black woman that I met quite a few years ago who convinced me, who really showed me my value, and she wouldn't let me quit. So I wanted to quit. I was upset. I didn't know what to do. I was like, how do I get from this point to this point? I have no idea. I was down and out, ugly crying on the floor every night. And she was like, no, Crystle, you are destined for great things and just keep your eye on the prize. So I'm very thankful to her for that.
Wow, powerful. Thank you so much. Awesome. And thank you so much for coming, Crystle. Our next panelist is from the East Coast with Kenneth Margaret. Welcome. Introduce yourself and thank you so much for taking the time to be part of the program as well.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor to be with all of you and be a part of this event and this panel. what can I say? Everybody's been talking about their parents, and I want to just kind of follow in that footstep because my dad especially, he was a journalist and traveled all over the world. He was a chief correspondent for the Korea Times, and my dad was my mentor, my hero, and kind of walked in his footsteps, but from a television side of the business. And you all mentioned some other folks in your lives that have kind of mentored you along the way. I wish I can say I had a mentor, but that was something that I just never really had. I had people that I gleaned from, and that I just, and really I think glean is probably the best word for what I had to do in order to get to where I am, because I gleaned, but I didn't have somebody who just really took me under their wing, which is something that I so wish that I had, but did not have. And so there were critical people at different times that told me specific things, but I didn't have that person just kind of taking me under their wing. And so a lot of what I'm doing and have been doing over the last few years, and especially in my role as the founder and CEO of Future Now Media Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to building future leaders coming into the media industry. And then my other company, iSTANDtv, which is a content studio and content platform, where I want to, the problem that I'm trying to solve for is a problem that I faced when I was starting in my career now, 20 plus, almost 30 years ago. And I'm like, why are we having the same issues today that I had when I was starting out? There's something wrong here. And there's something systemically wrong here. And so, through the work that I'm doing now, kind of leveraging my programming and production experience, I came up through news and then long form documentary. And then I was a programming and production executive at History Channel for many years, which has really informed a lot of what I'm doing today. How do we build connection? How do we build mentoring opportunities? How do we get these younger, just starting out college students, early career professionals, how do we get them better situated and better connected and better trained up and better, with professional skills as well as knowledge about the industry sooner rather than later? How do we help create those connection points and build those bridges and build that diverse pipeline into the industry? So, it was my dad. It was really my faith. Also, I'm a person of faith. And, I wished I could pinpoint a few people that took a, huge interest in me, but I wish I had that story, but I hope that I can create that story for others at this point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Margaret. Again, thank you for taking the time as well. Our next panelist, she was at the national conference about 5 years ago, and I'm so happy she's able to be with us today. Giselle Ruiz, please introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you do, and take it away.
Of course. Josh, so excited to reconnect and be part of this again. What you do is incredible, so thank you for the opportunity. To the panelists, I'm like geeking out, fans all over. I will be following up with everybody for more time as well, so be on the lookout for that LI invite. As far as myself, so Giselle Ruiz, I am a first-generation Dominican-American, born in Washington Heights, raised in Boston, and now have spent 14 years on the West Coast in mostly Los Angeles. Professionally, I have spent almost 20 years in global talent acquisitions and the intersection of diversity, equity, and inclusion. My day job right now is I do that currently at Tik Tok, but this is my personal and professional ministry. It's what I spend, what I say, 24 hours, 7 days a week, even when I'm sleeping doing. I am about creating access and opportunity for our people, and I'm very intentional about what that means. So Crystle, I want to learn everything about meaningful in every single way. And I've chosen to do that in the corporate setting, and to really focus and help organizations realize that we are an asset to any and all, and we are not unicorns, and that we exist, and that there are systemic things that have consistently kept us out of boardrooms, leadership opportunities, major companies and organizations, institutions, so forth and so on. So I spend all of my time and energy for those that are underserved, disenfranchised, marginalized, underrepresented in any way, shape, or form, and really leading that conversation through a lens of equity and inequity as opposed to a lens of equality, because I just don't think we're at the equality place quite yet. As far as my inspirations, God first and foremost, definitely. Blessings on blessings on blessings, both through the good and the bad, which I'm sure we'll get into. You know, and then other folks that come to mind are Mellody Hobson. If you guys are not familiar with Mellody, she's the president and co-CEO of Ariel Investments, the sisters from Southside Chicago. She also happens to be George Lucas's wife, for anybody that's a fan of Lucas Films, and just an incredible woman. She's got great TED Talks about all of this, and I just think just an inspiration as a leader of color and one for change. She's on every board on the planet. So I had the privilege to in a previous company attend a conference or an event with Mellody Hobson, and she single-handedly changed my life. I've never met her, but she sort of solidified that this is what I should be doing just from that conversation and her TED Talk. And then personal for me is Daisy Alger Dominguez. For those of you that are in New York, you probably know who Daisy is. She's a force to be reckoned with. She's the first time I saw myself in a corporate setting as a Dominican American badass leader. She runs her own venture and organization now, but is also now recently joined Vice as their CHRO. And frankly, like my personal Oprah and the person on this planet that I think does this work better than anyone else. I've never seen anybody really walk the talk in the way that Daisy does. And I had the privilege to work with her at Disney. She then opened the door for me to go work for her at Google. And I'm forever thankful for her and all the work that she does. So those are the call outs and the shout outs.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Giselle, and everybody else. Man, this is going to be a good one today. Woo, I can feel it already. I'm telling you, I feel it already. Real quick, we're going to get ready to get into the questions. Again, thank you all panelists so much for being a part of this today. I'm already inspired, and we haven't even got started yet, but I do want to say this really quickly. I just put in the chat box LinkedIn connection. So if you want to connect with any of the panelists, I'll put their links in there right now. So make sure you connect with them. Again, LinkedIn is a great place to do follow-up questions and just to be connected. So I put that information in the chat box. Also, I always like to know where people are from. So wherever you're from, please let us know where you're from, because I always like to know where people are from as well as it relates to this discussion today. So we're going to get into it. I don't want to waste any time. Crystle, I followed you for a while on LinkedIn before I actually reached out to you. And one of the things I love about LinkedIn is that, you know, when you're connected to amazing people, you see a lot of amazing posts and learn about amazing events. And so I've followed everyone, but Crystle does a lot of posts around inclusion and around helping men and women of color really succeed and really, you know, really thrive within the organizational culture and workplace. And so I think you'll be able to relate to this question. It's a thing that I put in my new book called Red Leadership. I think it's a very important question, because a lot of times when we deal with diversity and inclusion, you know, we deal with just having different people within the workspace. But what we don't talk about is the culture conducive for people from different cultural backgrounds to thrive? And so before we talk about diversity as far as from a representation standpoint, I want to deal with the culture, because I think if the culture is toxic, then no matter who you put in there, it's going to be toxic to them. And so my first question I want to ask, I'm going to start with you, Chris, and then we'll move through. My first question is this: what are 5 things that every organization, company, or campus community can create in order to ensure that professionals of color have the right organizational or workplace culture to thrive, succeed, and reach their fullest potential?
That is a really great question. And although I'm probably not going to go through 5 things, that may take too long, but I will talk about a couple. So I think a couple of things that organizations need to be places where people of color can thrive and navigate well would be that there has to be some goals and metrics around what good looks like. Because I think we all want to say, okay, well, we want an inclusive environment, but really, what does that look like? And once you decide what that actually looks like, you have to make sure you have measures in place to hold people accountable to those behaviors that you're saying need to be in place in order to have an inclusive environment. And then you have to have leaders who are role modeling these particular behaviors. So then they are driving those same sorts of behaviors with the people that report to them, with their peers, and then it's just going to continue to drive down throughout the organization. I think a lot of times when people think about inclusion and diversity and equity, they think that everything needs to start at the very top. But that's actually not true. Things should be starting at the top and at the bottom, and they should meet one another in the middle. And in this work in particular, we often hear about the messy middle or the frozen middle. Those are those managers, those mid-level managers in the middle that are getting it from the top and they're getting it from the bottom, and they're like, what do I need to do? Do I need to focus on making money? Do I need to focus on inclusion? Do I need to focus on people? What do I need to do? And if there is pressure from the top and the bottom, pressuring this group to create a more inclusive environment, then we'll be able to unthaw that middle and really unlock the behaviors that we're looking to see.
That's a great point. Who else wants us to chime in? Please feel free to chime in to add on to what Crystle's already established. Kenneth.
Yes. So man, Crystle was like right on point. I'm like, wow, she's looking at my notes apparently. But no, both of us have the same last name. Maybe there's some synergy there, right? It could be that. Yeah. So, you know, from a recruitment standpoint, right? Because this is what I do. I'm talent acquisition, and that's kind of the piece and the place that I play in. I definitely, when I'm sharing these conversations with organizations, I really like to make sure they have a strategy in place for their D&I functions, right? And then you need opportunities. We need opportunities as a recruitment firm at a couple different levels. I thought what Crystle said was really interesting. Top, bottom, let's meet in the middle. You know, I think there's a piece of that makes a lot of sense. And that's the first time I've even heard that, but I have the same thought process and pattern. So I think strategy, opportunity, then you have to have a structure to support diverse talent, right? Whether it's, you know, career mapping, mentorship programs, sponsorship opportunities, you know, internal, even external, that have some influence within the organization. I think those things are important. So strategy, opportunity, structure, and then transparency, right? You have to sometimes be able to admit that we haven't done a good job of supporting or retaining our diverse talent. And why is that, right? So that's a conversation that needs to take place. And usually that conversation needs to take place with leadership, right? So strategy, opportunity, structure, transparency, leadership. Those are the things I believe, the 5 items that will make a company at least have a shot at retaining diverse talent, being a diversity-friendly organization, and then kind of bearing the fruit to that as well.
That's great. That's great. Now, Demetrius, you and Margaret come from the entertainment space. How would you respond to this question from your industry?
Demetrius, you want to go first? Like, why did you go first? You know, I really appreciated both what Crystle and Kenneth have said already. What I was thinking about in terms of, you know, what I see is kind of the solution. And I think you're right, it has to come from the top, and it also, but the bottom or the ones that are not at the top still don't need to wait for the top to get with the program. What I see happening, at least from where I'm sitting, and I've been, you know, kind of in the industry and then kind of taken a big picture step back, what I see happening these days is that we have leadership that recognizes that diversity is an issue and the lack of diversity is an issue, but I don't know that they're recognizing it with a sincere desire to change that. I think they're throwing money at the problem. I think they are, and it's easier for me to say this because I'm not working at a major media company right now. I'd be having a harder time saying that out loud. but I think what I'm seeing is that people are saying and trying to burnish their brand to say, hey, we care about this stuff. But when it comes to the actual doing of it, I don't know that their heart and their mind is in the same place. I don't think that they're there yet, because it has to come from a real, authentic, sincere place of, we recognize that this is an issue, and we recognize that in order for us to do better in terms of our business, and this is business, so let's talk about the business, the audiences that we're trying to serve. We need more diversity, and that diversity, I also define that a little bit more broadly than just people of color or sexual orientation, or, to me, when diversity is truly happening on every level, you're getting the richness of perspectives, different perspectives. You're getting the richness of people's backgrounds and upbringings and experience. And that, when you bring all of that together, then you have something that's, it's like rich. It's rich, it's vibrant, it's, it's beautiful. Those are the things that make something great. But what I would like to see is a sincere recognition of, hey, this is something we really do want to change, not a just, we're going to throw money at this problem and we'll say we're going to, quote, show up, but you don't see anything going any deeper than that.
Great point. What about you, Demetrius?
Josh, I've always kept it 100 with you.
You always took you to 100.
This is something I've been on numerous talks about this over the last few weeks, and I cannot come up with a clear answer because I am the only Black producer in LA for ESPN, and I can name the other handful of producers in the entire company that look like me. I can pretty much name the handful of them. So it's a challenge, right? And it's, I have faith that the company is going to improve on the pillars that we're standing on now. But I've seen this movie before.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a challenge for me. But on a personal level, what I try to do is, I'm part of the National Association of Black Journalists. So I try to go to every convention and I try to get my hands on people. Not in a weird way, but I try to, touch young people and really give it to them, right? Like, this is what working at a company like this is like. Not just professionally, but personally. Like, you're gonna have to live in Bristol, Connecticut, right? I'm from Los Angeles. That ain't Bristol, Connecticut. You know what I mean? It's a different ball game. So I try to do what I can personally do, because I know I can control me. I can't control what other people are going to do. I don't know what the company's going to do, right? I know what the company says, but I also know what's in front of my eyes. Yeah. I know what I see. So what I try to do is I try to personally help people, because that's the one thing that I can control, right? When I go back to Connecticut, which is a lot, right? I look at the people who I've personally helped get jobs, and I say, there we go. Like, I'm giving back. I'm paying it forward, because I look at them and I smile. Like, they make me happier than producing the show sometimes, because I look at them and I'm like, damn, you guys are me, and this is an opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm pretty much the reason that you're here. Like, it's on me to a certain extent, because I don't know, I can't control what other people are going to do. I wish I had a better answer, but when I first saw the question, I thought about it, and I've been thinking about it. I've been on so many calls, and I'm like, I don't know how folks are just going to see a person get killed on national TV, and now all of a sudden racism exists. Like, that ain't gonna really change. I mean, it's kind of a struggle that I have, because now companies are like, oh, there's a real issue with racism and diversity. It's like, yeah, well, where you been the last 30, 40 years?
Right. That's true. That's a true statement.
but I'm trying to like figure out a good way to say these things, but I haven't figured it out yet. But you guys are gonna help me figure it out, because I'm listening to y'all and I'm like, damn, they're dope, because I can't get the words right. I'm being honest, I can't get it right, because I'm like, okay, so racism just started 30 days ago. Got it.
Yeah.
Diversity just became an issue? Okay, cool. You know, so how do you sort of change that narrative? I honestly don't know, but I know Disney is trying, and ESPN is gonna try, and I will personally hold them to it.
Awesome. What about you, Giselle? What's your thoughts?
I've got lots of thoughts.
Okay.
But where to chime in? Honestly, and I think I'm pretty radical when it comes to these things. Like, here's what I say to Demetrius, like, all of that plus one, and you know, Crystle and all of us, I know that my day job is one thing, and then the rest of the time I am doing everything I can to spend time doing my part, one-on-one, person by person, to get them access and opportunity to whatever spaces or places they feel they haven't had a chance to do on their own. And that's exhausting. It's exhausting to have to carry that burden and that weight and that responsibility individually, because traditionally or systemically, our institutions haven't done that. So I worked at Disney for a long time. Disney's an incredible brand. Guess what? Black people, brown people don't want to move to Bristol, Connecticut. Take your headquarters elsewhere, ESPN. Google, Facebook, Amazon, Black, brown people don't feel that they belong or have a sense of community in the Bay Area. Take your headquarters to Atlanta. Nike, similar. Black and brown people don't want to go to Portland. Take your headquarters to Atlanta, DC, New York, Miami, somewhere else, right? So like, that's the kind of systemic change that I'm talking about. That's the type of thing that I want to see these corporations and these companies really do, as opposed to throwing money at the problem, more events. Now, to Demetrius' point, 30 days ago, all of a sudden this is important. Everyone's got a hashtag Black Lives Matter. We've been living in this space forever, well beyond our years and our time on this planet. And frankly, I think we will continue to. The only difference now is we have a special window and a moment to make some really, really critical, radical change beyond just some of these minor things that all companies continue to do. That are frankly just not good enough anymore. You're gonna have to do something that is uncomfortable, that is systemic, that is long-term, that is sustainable, and that frankly is an idea that probably someone's never put at the table or that you've never wanted to do. You are gonna have to make some space for people to resign from senior leadership roles and from your boards, or create new opportunities. You are gonna have to think about, beyond just the head count that you have approved, creating new opportunities within your institutions and organizations to bring people that are not representative in your product, and to, you know, Margaret's point, like everything that we do is representative of the world and the country and the nation that we have built and that we're a part of. And if you as a product, as a platform, do not represent that in your workforce or in your workplace, then you don't deserve to be in our marketplace. So those are my thoughts initially.
So how do you really feel?
Exactly, about all of that. And it's what I challenge all of the institutions that I've been with, and people aren't ready to have those conversations. I'm not someone you want to talk to if you work in my corporate setting, because we're going to talk about that. And I've had to step out of a lot of organizations that weren't ready for that level of conversation. And I will only be a part of organizations that are ready to make that level of commitment and radical change and have accountability when they don't deliver, or I'm not going to be a part of it, because this is too important to me, to us, and enough is enough. And for any chief diversity officer that's been sitting in their org for over 5 years that hasn't made a difference, it's time to give up that job, move on over, and give someone else an opportunity to really be able to make a difference.
I want to ask a question. Those are all great points. I love everything that everyone's saying, by the way. That's awesome. I love that clap. I want to ask a point because, and I want to go back to Crystle, because I think Crystle said something. She talked about metrics, and she talked about being able to measure the good. I heard someone talk about defining good. And what I want to ask is, and I think this is always important, Demetrius, we saw it at ESPN. I'm a Laker fan. We're getting ready to win the championship, but that's a whole other discussion. But I think it was interesting, the shows where Avery Bradley was talking about, taking a stance And then they were talking about, well, give us some specific, some handles or some specific points or some things that we want to see change. And I think that's a great point, because I think a lot of times when we talk about D&I work, you know, there's a lot of ambiguity. Not everyone does this, but I think a lot of people have a lot of ambiguity. But I want to get to the specific things that need to be changed. So if I went into the room right now with my CEO, if I went into the room right now with the president of my university, and anyone could ask this question, what are some specific things that can be done? And I want to go in levels, some small steps that can be taken, some middle level steps, and then the big steps. If you all can just begin to chime in, what are some small things? What are some middle things? And there were some big things that we can do right now, because, you know, like Demetrius said, man, we've been on this road, as Crystle said, 400 plus years, but we've been on this road a lot. And so I really don't want to let this be another, what I call as a hype moment, right? I want to see serious change like everybody else. And so I think in order to see serious change, not only do we need vision, but we need specific things that we can do. So I want to ask you all, what are some minor things we can do? What are some middle level things we can do? And then what are some big things that we can do to really create change or to be advocates for change that we need to see?
So I'll start this question, because I think this is the most important thing that needs to happen. Like, first of all, this is not a shiny object. This is not a moment, it's a movement. So you got to be dedicated to it. So the very first thing organizations have to do is that they have to understand baseline. Where are you today? When you think about the demographics of your organization and you think about it across race and ethnicity, gender, however else you track demographics, where are the gaps and opportunities in your organization from a quantitative perspective as well as a qualitative perspective? So the data itself in your system, when you're thinking about representation, then also thinking about engagement scores. So if you're checking engagement of your employees, don't just give me the main number, like the average overall. I need to know, how are Black people feeling about their experience here? How are Latinx people feeling about their experience here? How are white people feeling? How are women feeling? How are men feeling? So then you can actually understand what is happening. And then for qualitative, you want to have listening sessions. You want to do culture studies. You want to understand from people, how are you experiencing this company? Because on another topic, you know, when you have engagement surveys, a lot of times people won't tell you how they really feel because they don't trust that the survey is actually anonymous. So you need a holistic approach to really understand what is baseline, what are our gaps and opportunities before you decide to go and do something. And I've seen that many times where organizations are throwing spaghetti at the cabinet, like, let me just throw this at the cabinet, see if it sticks. But you want to make sure that you know why you're doing things. And then that way you understand, what kind of metrics am I tracking? Am I progressing towards my goal, or am I going backwards?
That's great. That's great. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I'll jump in real quick just to sort of add +1 to all of that. But I think one of the immediate action items, Josh, to get to the point of your question, is from a recruitment standpoint, right, which is sort of my expertise. I feel like a lot of organizations focus on, well, let's do internship programs, or let's do early career professional work, or let's go to HBCUs. Like, there are no Black people that go to other schools besides HBCUs, right? Like, nothing against HBCUs. We should be doing that, and also recognize that, you know, Black and brown people are at Harvard as well, and also state schools and all other institutions. So I think we need to double down on really thinking about prioritizing senior level, executive level, mid-management level positions when we build out our diversity strategies. So to your point, if you were walking in with a CEO, that's the layer that I would be focused on. And building really meaningful, intentional relationships, even if you don't have jobs open, knowing who are the key players, who are the top people, professionals within whatever field you are in, whether it be entertainment and media, technology, you know, whatever other industry it might be. who are those people that are going to bring all kinds of diversity to your organization, but that are really going to focus on the areas where you have inequities and you have gaps? Because most organizations and institutions are white cisgender male. And the way that I try to explain it in my community currently is like, listen, if we have 4 senior leadership roles and we fill those all with white, heterosexual, cisgender male, then that person's probably going to stay in that job for the next 10 years or more. And so now we've lost that on the opportunity to really think about impacting diversity from a leadership perspective for the next decade, right? And I think when you speak about it in that way, and it's not just about the tangible job that's in front of you, but it's the repercussions or ramifications of making some of those decisions, then people start to really think about this differently. So I say this isn't a race, this is a marathon. To Crystle's point, it's not a moment, it's a movement. It's all about long-term sustainable commitment. And it's hard work because you have to change your systems. And it might mean that you have to stop hiring for a minute, which no one wants to hear. Let's stop business to really actually jump in and develop some solutions that are going to have long-term meaningful change.
Great.
That's again, I think that's really interesting that you guys say it's not just a moment, but that's my biggest fear. In my industry, it is, what's today, the 25th? So in a month, June 25th, in a month, you're gonna have baseball, you're gonna have basketball coming back, football is around the corner, pro football, college football. It's all about, you're gonna have tennis and golf. You're gonna have everything coming back. So what happens in August when everything is back? Is the moment past? That is my current fear. When when people go back to work, right? Because a lot of people are home. A lot of people lost their jobs and a lot of people are home. So now it's all like, oh yeah, we're in it. We're in the sauce now. But when the sports start and you got highlights, LeBron just dunked on somebody and you got, Serena's back and all these things are happening. What happens then? What is the narrative then? Do people care about D&I and will people care about diversity and inclusion in a month? That is sort of where I question if this is not just a moment. And I hate to sound pessimistic, but I'm like, man, I'm talking, and I'm referring to my particular industry, right? Because like right now, I don't have live sports. So what I'm covering the 2020 civil rights movement. That's what I'm covering. Mm-hmm. But in a month when I have highlights and when I have all these things happening, what happens then? And that's what I'm sort of like wrestling with now.
Yeah, I mean, because we all have kind of seen this could be replay, or we can actually the onus is on us and each and every one of us to keep the pressure on. It's only a movement if we move it. If we kind of like get distracted or forget about it, or you get tired, and that's human too, is to get weary of the fight. But we have to continue to keep that fight of faith to until we see the change that is needed and is required. I so appreciate what all of you have shared. I kind of feel like the Asians are being left out here because you keep saying black and brown, and we've got some yellow in here as well. And what happens a lot with the Asian Americans and I'll speak specifically in the media industry, we may be the first to get hired, and we all, the stereotype is we all work really, really hard, and we're perfectionists and whatever, but we get stuck in that middle level.
Yeah, but you got hired. You know what I mean? That's part of the issue too. That's crazy.
Yeah, we get hired, but we don't get promoted past that mid-level position. And so there is a systemic thing, and I think there is a cultural bias there, like this far and no further for you. And so so to break through that ceiling is really, really difficult. And then the other thing one of the thoughts that I had as Joshua, you had asked the question in the first place was, what can we do now at, the big level, the little level, and what have you. And I think, allyship is extremely important. And the more that we share and the more that we communicate, the more that we understand, experiences that are ours, and then that are also, coming from a different perspective or tribe or whatever, the more that we communicate and the more that we can understand that this is about the common good, right? And we have been, there has been a bias against what is the common universal good and giving preference or to a particular part of the group. And my thing, and you, Giselle, you also talked about your faith. To me, this is about mankind, all of us as human beings and humankind, and how do we come at it that way so that we're not always looking at it from an us and them kind of perspective, but how do we all love and respect one another and give each other that opportunity and all stand for what is right, as opposed to, what's right for this group or what's right for that group. It's gotta be, we are all in this together as the human race.
Margaret, I just want to jump in to clarify one thing that I think is important. So you'll always hear me personally, I always talk about Black and brown specifically. To me, Black and brown is anything that is not white Caucasian, right? So it's not related to a skin tone. It is related to anybody who is not part of the white dominant class. So that includes Asian Americans, that includes Middle Eastern, that includes Native Americans, that includes, again, any group that is underrepresented, marginalized, or disenfranchised in any way in our nation and in our country. That's disability, that's veterans, that's LGBTQI, right? Like, to me, that's how I define personally Black and brown. So I definitely want to clarify that. And to your point about us against them, because I again, definitely as a woman of faith, and that's sort of like my pillar, I hear you. And I think that, like, utopia is equality. Utopia is humanity. Utopia is like kumbaya, hand in hand. We all can see each other just as individuals and all of the beautifulness that we bring to every seat at the table. I think the challenge with that is that we're frankly, in my opinion, nowhere near that. I think we are unfortunately still in a place of really having to focus on inequity and equity as opposed to equality, because there still are way too many gaps in all of our systems where very specific groups, Black and brown, and then if you want to be even more particular, African American primarily, as we're seeing with the BLM movement, are more disenfranchised than others, have greater gaps, have greater challenges, and therefore, until we're ready to really address down to the root of every single one of these groups individually and what challenges they have within the systemic constructs that have already been created, until we can dismantle those one by one, I don't feel we're going to be ready to get to where you want to go, which frankly is where I want to go, where, I want to work myself out of a job, like, I don't want to be having to spend all my day and time having to Black power, fight it out for like all of us in every way. So I think we're all saying the same thing. We're heading in the right direction. I think what you present is absolutely beautiful and wonderful in the direction that we'd all love to be. I think it sort of eliminates a lot of Demetrius's fears and concerns if we can kind of get there. But I think we're in a moment right now where we need to capitalize on, wow, for whatever reason, COVID, the combination of everything that's happened in 2020. For me, I live in LA, Kobe Bryant, that's still in my heart and soul. So many other things. I mean, the koalas in Australia, we forgot about them. It's just been a rough moment. And I think to keep the momentum on the movement, Demetrius, right? Like, when ESPN comes back to sports, what are you going to do to make sure that you continue to integrate this into your day-to-day work?
You ain't got to worry about me.
So that this doesn't...
You don't have to worry about
And I got a sister for you.
Down.
Listen, I got a sister for you if you don't already know her. So Joy Pena, leads diversity and inclusion at ESPN. And she's with you in Bristol. So, brother, if you haven't connected with her already, I'll make sure that happens so that you guys can fight on together.
I don't normally chime in. I'm gonna come to you, Kenneth, and we're gonna get you on in a minute as well. I want to chime in on Demetrius' point. So, I've been doing diversity inclusion work since I was born, really. But I mean, as far as really helping people, really since I was about 19 years of age. And so I feel Demetrius on that whole. I mean, I've seen this whole thing go over and over again, and I'm always like, man, what's going to happen after the hoopla? And so my case, to your point, Demetrius, is a program that I do on campuses a lot. I call it Everyday Activism. I'm going to do a shirt, by the way. I got a shirt, but it's called Everyday Activism. What I mean by that is that every day you can do something to advance a cause. Like a lot of times I think we assume that activism is just a protest when it's so much more than that. And there's so many different roles and there's so many dynamics. So maybe the protests won't be like they are right now. Maybe they won't still be there, but there's still going to be policy work. There's still going to be executives. There's still going to be training. There's still going to be really coming back to, like what you said, Demetrius, just grabbing that young person and saying, look, I'm about to tell you what to do. I'm going to break this down for you. I'm going to get you prepared. So what I think is important for people to understand, and I'm glad you brought that up, Demetrius, is that it goes on as long as we're committed. I think really this movement is not based on the situation or the circumstance or even what the narrative is put out. The movement is based on us individually making up in our minds, as Giselle said earlier, this is her ministry, this is her life, that for the rest of my life, I'm committed to doing what I need to do to advance and create equity and create opportunity for people of color everywhere. And I think that is really the message I hope people get, that when it's not popular, when we're not seeing, when everyone's not talking about it, when, it's not the big thing, people are so committed that even if you don't get an award, even if you don't get a raise, even if you don't get a promotion, you're still doing the work. And I think that to me, that's the message that I think is essential to be brought home. But Kenneth, I'm gonna let you go because I can talk all day and I'm the moderator, so.
Now listen, I was enjoying your commentary on that. So, it's really interesting. I was kind of sitting back and listening, and you mentioned, 3 things, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like, all right, so the elephant in the room is racism, right? And if you just want to just look at 3 things, I know you mentioned big, small, little. All right, so systematic, overt, covert, right? Racism. Yeah. But that's kind of where we're at. Like until we get past that hurdle, and I think to a lot of the panelists' point, the whole equity piece is the thing. Nobody's necessarily asking for equality right now. Like, come on, that's not the way. That's not where we're headed. But like, equity would be really important to just kind of balance the scales to address the elephant in the room, right? So with that being said, I just think that's the key to it. Just having some real honest conversations about what's really going on. A lot of times we cover so much of this up through data, metrics, conversations, town halls, but nobody just steps to the plate and says, look, there's some systematic racism within this organization that we need to address immediately. And just as a third-party recruitment partner, like even the piece that Giselle was speaking about, kind of where you're centered at in doing your business. Like, we're here in Harlem, but we're here for a reason. This is where we want to operate and do the work that we do, because we believe there's a talent pipeline for the people that we need to work with here in our community, and it extends across a lot of other communities as well. So I don't know, that's the piece for me. It's, let's deal with that and then kind of work to get better and to get to other places equitable in nature.
I want to move on to this next question. I'm like, man, time is going by so fast. That's why I say 5:30. But time is going on so fast, and we only got to one question, right? So that shows this is the engaging conversation. But I want to ask this question because I think I do think it's important, because we have a lot of people that work in student affairs, that work on college campuses, and they're preparing culturally diverse students for the workplace. And I want to ask you all the question, if you were talking to them today, and I know each of you can share great insights about this, what are some things that they need to ensure their students understand before, well, before they step into that job after graduation? What are some specific things as a professional of color that they need to be aware of that you believe will help them to thrive? And please be very honest, you know, no sugarcoat, because there's some real stuff that we need to talk about, but please be real honest about some stuff that I think is really valuable for our students. And whoever wants to chime in, please go.
I'll chime in. This is not totally about your skill set. You need to be equipped with the skills to be able to perform whatever job you're going for. But that ain't it. It's about your network. It's about your personal brand. It is about how you present yourself. I always talk about personal brand. And I know some people hate that because they're like, oh, brand, whatever. I'm like, yo, your brand is super important. How you carry yourself is very important. You know, how you dress for the job that you want, not the job you have, but the job that you want. I mean, in my industry, if you look like a PA, if you look like a production assistant, they're always going to envision you as a production assistant. But if you don't look like that, if you present yourself well, if you wear a blazer, if you attend meetings, if you join networks, if you change your personal brand, if you have, your network is your net worth, right? I know that sounds super cliche, but I mean, that's one of the realest things anybody ever taught me. It's like, if don't nobody know who you are, then you're not gonna get this job, right? I mean, I keep it all the way 100. Like, you gotta be a part of organizations and you gotta look the part. If you don't look the part, you playing yourself. You know, that's one of the best pieces of advice that I would give people is to, you know, make sure that your personal brand is on point. You look professional, you're polished, you know what you're talking about, because nobody can take away your knowledge, right? They can say, you know, they can say whatever they want to say, but if you know what you're talking about, you got that. You put that to the side. Work on the other things as well, because that's how you're going to advance, in my opinion.
Anybody else like to chime in?
So I want to chime in about this idea of professionalism. Mm-hmm. Because professionalism is derivative of white culture. So the first thing I think students of color need to know is that you're not the problem. There is no problem with you, that you are the flower and there's something going on with the soil. So I think that's important. Like, they have to be comfortable with who they are, what they bring to the table, how they can add value, how they can add impact to these organizations. And yes, use adaptation as a tool, but I don't think we should tell people to assimilate to what is going on in the organization at the time, because again, professionalism is derivative of white culture.
No, I didn't say that. I'm not saying that though.
What you saying, Demetrius?
That's you think I'm saying somebody should assimilate? That
I mean, technically, yes. If you're saying you have to dress a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to do this a certain way, that's assimilating to the status quo of that organization, and it's derivative of white culture. So I think it's okay to adapt. That's fine, but I think it's important to let Black and brown people know that there's nothing wrong with you. You might have to do these things in order to adapt, but make sure you're using that as a tool and you're not saying, I need to be a different person.
I'm not saying that there's a problem.
Okay.
But strategy in every game is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, adaptation. I mean, you can adapt, but I think we have to make sure that people understand that at your core, there's nothing wrong with you. And I think sometimes we believe that there's something wrong with me. I need to be a different person when I walk into this space. Instead of saying it's a game, I need to be strategic and do this strategic thing versus there's something wrong with me, I'm a problem.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a game. And you have to learn how, going to buy a car is a game. Mm-hmm. Everything is a game. And your strategy is very, very important, right? That is what I'm saying. I know ain't nothing wrong with me, but there is a system that is in place, and there are people who don't even believe the system is in place, right? So I can speak to the head coach of the Denver Broncos came out, if not last week, 2 weeks ago, it says racism is not in the NFL. Right? This is a real problem, right? Yeah. So I'm not saying something's wrong with me or us or young students of color, but what I'm saying is you have to be smart, and you have to be strategic about what you're doing, right? You have to send follow-up emails. You have to be at the networking event. You have to play the game. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying change who you are. I'm just saying adjust to the game.
Yeah. I would just add, you need to be in the room, right? And then it's also about, we're in the communications business. And so what is effective communication? So when I think of effective communication, and, you know, I have certain like experiences where this person who was my supervisor and was the one responsible for introducing me into this job that I had at the time. And she got really jealous because I got very successful. But in my mind, my goal has always been, I want to do my utmost because, you know, my faith requires that, but it's also to make her look good so that it doesn't seem like she made a mistake in bringing me on, right? But I got very successful, and then she got jealous, and then she actually tried to, blow me up in a not good way. I mean, she was trying to sabotage me. And I did not feel that I was equipped. I didn't have the skills to, you know, from my culture, we respect authority. We don't, you know, talk back to our parents. We don't do those things. So I did not grow up with the muscle being developed of how to resolve conflicts. It was like, no, you avoid conflict. You avoid conflicts, you know, you don't engage conflicts, much less expect that from someone who is older than you, because we have this, you know, we respect our elders and those who are older than us and stuff. So having grown up with that mentality, I didn't know how to address this. I just knew that I had to, but I didn't know how to do that. And then talking to my dad didn't help because, you know, his cultural framework is very different from what it is to work here in corporate America in the United States. And so, you know, I forgot now what the point was for me to share this. There's a point. I had to, it's about effective communication. So I prayed. I was like, God, you got to help me because I don't know how to have this conversation. I've not been trained. I didn't read the books about communication or leadership or anything like that. And my prayer was simply like, help me to communicate to her what I need to say, so that, and say it in such a way that she can hear me, she can understand me, and she can receive it. Because that's ultimately what effective communication is. And so that requires empathy, that requires humility. And then it's like, okay, what do I need to say? And not just saying it however I want to say it, or emotionally, or with tears or anything like that. But how do I say this in a way that I can get my message across to her? She can understand, she can receive it, and accept it in the best case scenario. And then we resolve this. And then I was resolved to, before having the conversation, I was like, okay, this could go one of a few different ways. She could own up to it and apologize and we're good, or, she can throw me out of her office and then I'll have to quit. So I was prepared for any eventuality, but I went in there with the mindset to have effective communication. And so ultimately what happened was we had the conversation. She owned up to it, she apologized, and then we were good. And then she respected me moving forward. And so, what I hope is that, that skill of effective communication and really understanding what that means, because I think in the world of social media these days, where you just say whatever you want to say, and it's just out there, and then you can just shut people down without listening to what they might have to say in return, or then it just becomes this ugly, unproductive back and forth. It's like, that's not effective communication. So how do we, with the stakeholders that we have to deal with in our businesses and in our corporations and in our communities, how do we effectively communicate so that we are bringing our whole self? We're not compromising who we are and what we stand for and what makes us special and unique, but we're also doing that in such a way that the other person can actually hear us. I think that's one of the greatest challenges that I see happening right now. How do we take this moment and go deeper?
Great point. That's a great point. I love that. Communication, I think, one thing that I do want to share, I think across the board, we see effective communication amongst all the panelists as well. So those are just things that I think are great to take notes as far as, different perspectives, different ways of looking at things. But and I think it's important that the truth about it is we're going to have different opinions, different thoughts, or different beliefs. But that doesn't mean we have the right to disrespect people. Doesn't that mean that we have the right to put people down? Because everyone is important, everyone is valuable. So I love that point about communication. We got like 25 minutes according to the 5:30 flyer. I just feel this question in my heart. Like, this is going longer, but like, for real, it's so good. I don't want to stop. Like, I got all this other stuff, and I'm like, forget about it. I really do think it's a great conversation. And the funny thing is, we've only scratched surface. That's what's crazy about it. But I do want to ask this question because I think there was something brought up that I think is so critical that I hear about as far as imposter syndrome, or feeling you're not good enough, or dealing with rejection, or sometimes maybe you're the only professional of color in an environment where there's no one else that looks like you. I want to ask a question for the panel. How do you deal with those challenges? And even more important, how do you deal with the microaggressions that come at you in the workplace as a person of color? Because I think this is important to understand when we're preparing, culturally diverse students for the workplace, that there's maybe moments you may be the only, I say, blue person with all red people, or there's a ton of microaggressions, a ton of things that are coming at you on a daily basis. How do we help students to navigate this? And not just navigate, how do we help them to prepare for this? Because I know that we're in this movement and we're moving forward, but the truth be told, it took 400 years to get to where we are today. We still have a long ways to go. I want to know, how do we prepare people for these real challenges that I know everyone on the panel has faced at some point? I'm gonna start with you, Giselle. Let's roll on down. Giselle, what's your thought on that?
So I think it's a combination of sort of what Demetrius and Crystle were saying, because, there's a lot of code switching, there's a lot of assimilation, there's a lot of things that we've always been taught, right, about like our professional, quote unquote, professional voice and appearance versus who we are when we get home and we're with our friends and family, right? Again, all of these things are systemic. So, both Crystle and Demetrius are right. And there's a combination of both. And so for me, I'm just kind of done with it, right? Like, the ability to even do things or have to think about like wearing my natural hair, even though I'm in braids right now, and whether or not that's something I could do professionally. Like, I'm 20 years into my career and I'm still not there, because clearly there's something that's been taught to me before I even started in the workforce that that says that I can't show up like my authentic self to work. And it's taken this long to get to a place where I feel comfortable doing that. And frankly, it's because of the fact that I've built a career now where, my reputation and my brand precedes me. But a lot of us didn't have those opportunities or haven't had the opportunities to do that yet. So I think it's frankly up to those of us that are in sort of leadership roles. And I don't even mean leadership roles like what your title is, but like you are a natural born leader. To stand up to these things and to make sure that we're helping young professionals understand that they are enough, to Crystle's point, that they can be their authentic selves, that what they bring to the table. I start off all my interviews by saying, tell me your story, tell me your journey, tell me about you. Before you jump into your pedigree, your education, your professional experience, I want to know who you are, because there are so many gems that come from that help me understand that candidate as their perseverance, their agility, their dedication, their commitment, their grind, their hustle. Like, we're about hustle. Those things add value to an organization in ways that most companies are not really paying attention to. And so I just implore that everyone, when there is a microaggression, that you address it if you feel comfortable. And people do that to me all the time. I'm not the expert in this. And I also have my own microaggressions with different groups and amongst other groups, right? I saw somebody in the comments say, let's not play, oppression Olympics. We all have a lot to learn in this. And I get called to the mat all the time about things that I've said. And I also am taking the opportunity to educate myself about groups that I'm not a part of, right? So I know a lot about being Black. I know a lot about being, Dominican. I know a lot about being a woman of color. I don't know enough about LGBTQIA, right? I don't know enough about, being Asian American, or being disabled or being a veteran, right? So I sort of take the opportunity to make sure that I'm educating myself while educating others on just making sure that we're having these tough and uncomfortable conversations and saying, hey, that thing you said, this is kind of how that made me feel, and this is the reason why, and really just assume good intent. I know it's hard. It's really hard for me to assume good intent, that people just don't know, and that they're willing to sort of learn and create a bridge to be able to educate and create awareness about a lot of these things. I'll very quickly just point something out that I think sort of references this. So, as a Dominican American, as my family being from a different country, I know what it means to have a blue passport, right? Like as an American, as a young, from when I was 3 years old, I knew what it meant to have a blue passport. You have a blue American passport. You have the privilege to travel basically to any country on the planet Earth without having to get a visa or any permission to do so. That is an American thing. And we don't even recognize that that's privilege as an American. When you're from a different country, like my country, a third world country, to get out of the Dominican Republic, you frankly got to be able to prove that you have enough money to want to go back there. And from, again, just an immigrant perspective, I've had so many conversations with friends that don't even realize the value and the privilege of a passport, right? And so I start a lot of conversations even with that around, just us understanding we all have privilege. Even those of us that are disenfranchised have some sort of privilege. Those of us that are in the United States of America have a hell of a lot of privilege. So find the commonality within the microaggression to start having those conversations so that people realize how different groups, including ourselves, systemically end up creating barriers for one another. So I know I went on a tangent, Josh.
That was great. That was great. No, that was great. That was phenomenal. That was very good. Crystle, I'm moving all the way across the board. I'm gonna get you, kid. Crystle, what's your thought on that question?
I agree with everything Giselle said. The only thing that I would add is that if you are a person of color who's entering the workplace, if you are experiencing microaggressions, please give yourself the room to pause. Give yourself grace, because it can be very hard in the moment to kind of try to respond to a microaggression. For all of us, we go into this fight, flight, or freeze mode, and we can often, like, our heart starts beating fast, our hands start getting sweaty, and whatever we want to say may not come out in a way that we want it to come out, or that actually helps that person to understand what the impact of what they've said or what they've done to us. So give yourself a moment to pause, to respond, or come back to it. Like, you don't have to respond to that person in the moment. Yes, if you feel comfortable telling them in the moment, do it. But if you need to take the time to go think about it first and then come back, give yourself that grace. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've read an email and then I'm angrily typing. And then I'm like, listen, delete. I cannot say that. I need to come back to this later. So again, pause.
That's so good. That's so good. I can relate to that. Margaret.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Giselle and Crystle have already shared. Let me see if I can add anything. And I would agree with what Demetrius said. It's like you need to set yourself apart. And so if all things were being equal, what do you need to do to then set yourself apart? And, it's the relationships that you build. And when you say branding, personal branding, it does have a little bit of I have that kind of reaction whenever I hear that term. And when I talk to students, I'm like, when you think about your personal brand, it's your reputation. It's not just the little shiny thing that you're going to put out there. This is who I am. It's like, who are you really? And does your reputation line up with the image that you want to have of yourself? Are those two things aligned? Because if those two things are not aligned, then you're just putting on a mask, and you're just trying to put this thing out there, which a lot of brands do that. But it's so much better and easier. And you don't have to act if you're being real and you're being that person of integrity and you're being a person of excellent attitude and somebody who, it cares about what they're doing and about others. And so if you can just master that, that is your personal brand. That becomes your personal brand. That is your reputation. Bottom line, it's your reputation. It's not the image that you just want to put out of yourself that might not be aligned. It's what is in alignment. And so I would say really do pay attention to that because it's extremely important, and that's for life. And then the other thing Demetrius said about networking. So again, that's another like icky word to some people, right? So, but what is networking? At the bottom line, think about it as building relationships. And so when you're building authentic, real relationships, not because of what can this person do for me and expecting something for that person to do for me, but thinking about what can I do to help serve that person? What can I do to help that person? If you think about it that way, then you're already putting something on the table that's something to pay attention to. And so think about the networking not as this thing where you have to schmooze and you gotta, act a certain way. Think about it as, how do I bring my authentic self, be real, and build a relationship, and think about the relationship not as a transaction, but a relationship. So it's not about what can this person do for me? Can this person give me a job? Can this person do this thing for me? You're thinking about it, you're respecting them, and you're respecting the fact that you're trying to build something that's lasting as opposed to short-term and transactional.
Yeah, I think reputation is very important in the qualities that you possess. I totally agree with that. And relationships. Demetrius, it's on you.
I think Kenneth looked like he had some. I saw the look on your face, and I'm gonna go ahead and let you hold this one because I think Margaret and I come from very different worlds.
So that's what we're gonna do right now, right? You just
if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it. Wholeheartedly.
So listen, you know what? Just in listening to everyone, and Joshua, let me be respectful to your platform, right? I know you have students here, some early career professionals on the platform. So I just kind of want to be in a position where I can add some value there. What I kind of consistently see, and you got to understand, so I'm a third-party recruiter, and I'm trying to work with both sides of the desk, right? Candidates and hiring influencers and hiring managers, right? But I think on a lot of different levels, when you're talking about diverse candidates, you're dealing with a lot of fear on both sides, right? Am I good enough? Am I good enough for this opportunity? I get this from people. And I think you have to address your own fear. You're definitely good enough for the opportunity, right? And then there's some misinformation on the other side of the desk as well, right? So you start positioning people based on your biases. So kind of addressing that. And I do think on both sides, we honestly have to learn how to pivot a little. Demetrius had said something really important earlier. Sometimes it's not about, of course, you need to have the skill set, but there's a lot of other factors to come into navigating this career journey. And I think we're in a place now, to Crystle, Giselle, Margaret's point, we can start confronting some of the biases and just being present and being our real selves when we come into these rooms. I think a willingness to do that without the fear of being held accountable for it, not being disrespectful, but just being yourself. I think if people can kind of really start working on those platforms, then we'll start seeing some progress. But, those are a few things that need to all come in alignment for us to be successful. But I think as a student or a young career professional, just keep in mind that you are good enough for the opportunity. Sometimes you do have to pivot and be mindful of misinformation.
Yeah. No, that's a great point too, because I totally agree with it. And I just want to say, as far as, Demetrius, just going back to Demetrius, no, because I want to just, it's there, so I'm going to address it though. I just think,
you know me.
No, I know. So I just think, just going back to Demetrius' point, man, me and Demetrius, we met 8 years ago. At an NABJ program. And I just want to just give a shout out to Demetrius, man. He's just always been there for me and the network, right? I mean, he's been there to every year to come support Circular Change. He's always been there, connected me with another connection with Gabriella. And so I just want to commend you for that, Demetrius. I just want to thank you so much all the time. I want to just thank you for that and just thank you for the friendship and just thank you for all the stuff that you've done. And really, you know what I'm saying? And really just always bring your best self. You know what I'm saying? Always checking people at our conference. I've been moments at our conference where people, you know, we're just making sure that they were stepping up to the plate. And so I just want to just say I really appreciate that as well. And so Demetrius, I'm gonna come back to you and I'm gonna ask you this last question because we have about 10 minutes left. And my last question is this: as we get ready to conclude, again, there's so much stuff to say, so much great information to talk about. But I want to come back to this last question, Demetrius, and I want to know there's a study I want to share, and it said that 5% of executives from Fortune 500 companies were Blacks, Hispanics, or Natives. And I want to ask the question. This is a real one, Demetrius. Are we going to see a change with this?
A change in what?
As far as the diversity, as far as the change. I mean, we're moving forward, we're going forward. Do you see a change coming, or do you think it's going to be the same stuff over and over again?
I think it was what may have been Margaret. I'm not sure. Alluded to utopia. I don't think utopia is coming tomorrow. You know, my company has said, you know, we're standing on principles, and this is what we're gonna do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, ideally, I hope there is change. Yeah. I really, really do. Yeah. But I can speak to countless people who have been passed over, haven't been promoted, don't get the same bag that other people get. And, you know, a lot of them look like me. You know, I can't speak to why. I'm not saying that there's somebody in the room with their finger on the button, but I can speak to what I see with my own eyes. And I know a lot of people who look like me who don't get the same opportunities. And I think that is not in the best interest of my particular company, because I think we produce better shows when we have inclusive staffs and inclusive team with people from all over the country with different experiences. You're gonna have a better show. I work in sports. There are all types of people in sports, right? And if you wanna have a better show, you put yourself in a better position when you have a diverse staff, because we can all bring different story ideas to the show and make a better show. But do I think it's going to change? Because some people think that, oh, now, you know, there's a racism problem. There are people who just realize that this is a problem. Yeah. There are people who just realize, oh, there's not a woman in the room. Maybe this is a problem. Yeah. Some people just found this out last night. Right. You know what I mean? So I don't see how this is gonna automatically change, but I certainly hope it does. We're gonna see. I mean, I'm gonna do my best to continue to move the movement, which you guys alluded to earlier, which is dope. And I'm stealing that. Whoever said it, I don't know if it was Crystle who said it or Giselle. I'm stealing it. But I'm gonna move the movement because I'm gonna use my platform. You know, I am fortunate enough to have a national TV show. So I'm gonna keep moving the movement because that's my way of protesting, right? Because a whole lot of people can see what I can do, right? But do I think it's just gonna change? I mean, it's not gonna happen if people like me aren't in the room, right? People aren't gonna just say, gonna come to work when the world opens up or whatever and say, I'm gonna give up my power that I've had for the last 30, 40 years. That shit ain't, this stuff, excuse me, that's not just going to happen, right? So there's gotta be that whole, we're gonna have to really work at this, right? Because this is not just going to happen. People aren't just gonna come to work and say, oh man, I wanna change what's been working for me for the last 20 years. Yeah. Yeah. This is how I've gotten my children through school and how I've gotten the stock options in the company. Anybody gonna just upset that, right? They wanna eat. Yeah. So it's incumbent upon us to really move the movement. So, yeah, I don't think the powers that be are going to want to just change the system, right? The NFL just apologized to Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
They didn't even know what he was doing. But like, they whiteballed him and he can't even get a job. You know, I mean, this is so ridiculous. The things in my particular industry, I don't foresee it just changing, but I certainly hope it does.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you. We literally have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to start on Kenneth's side, going back across. Really quickly, for those that want to connect with our wonderful panelists, I'm putting it in it. Oh, I'm putting it with all the attendees. So make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn. I'm going to start with you, Kenneth. Real quick, 30-second final closing thoughts that you want to share with everyone. And also what you have going on as well, how people can connect and learn about the wonderful things that you are doing. And we'll go all the way, I'll go all the way across.
Yeah, sure. You know, listen, in the work I do, sometimes it's really hard for me to see progress, right? Because I'm invested in this, man. I've been doing this for 20 years, diversity recruitment, when people didn't even, they didn't acknowledge that there was a challenge or that it even existed. So just the fact that I can sit here and be on a panel with representatives from ESPN, Tik Tok, Crystle's organization, you know, Margaret, like their professional lives, right? And they're in decision-making positions at Fortune 500 organizations. So I have to reevaluate kind of the lens that I look at this in, but there's just so much more work to do. So kudos to you for kind of bringing this together and the work that you do to support diversity and inclusion moving forward. It's imperative, man, brother. So just stay in this game and continue to provide the program. And I know you thought about not doing 2 a month. I'm going to encourage you to do that, my man. So, I'm putting the work on you, or maybe somebody else will pick that up for you, right? But anyway, yeah, I just want to say kudos to all the panelists. Great points, man. Demetrius, I'm a fan, bro. You speak. I appreciate that. Also, if anybody that's on the platform wants to connect with me, Kenneth L. Johnson, I'm heavy on LinkedIn, but you can just go to eastcoastexecutives.com and lock into all our social media feeds and just kind of find out what's happening with us. We're the diversity recruitment leader. We're not going anywhere. This is what we do.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ken. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And I'm taking that word, man. You done gave me my motivation today, man. You done. Yeah. I had an interesting week with my whole chest, and it's a long story. But I'm gonna keep on going, man. I'm pumped right now. Okay, Demetrius, back to you. Closing thoughts.
Kenneth, I'm coming to Harlem to eat at Amy Roof's with you.
I'm going tomorrow. Hold on. I'm going tomorrow because it's a late Father's Day gift. I'm going tomorrow. You're welcome to come through. We'll do that.
Next time I'm in New York, Amy Roof's is like after the club, y'all. I'm telling y'all, the waffles after the club. Can't beat it.
Shout out there, 116th.
I would say you got to keep grinding, keep fighting. That's what I did. You know, this struggle is very real, and I'm trying not to give any of the cliche answers, but you know, this is hard. This is hard. It is not for thin-skinned people, because there's a lot of BS. You know, you're going to straight up be in meetings and you're going to see people get promoted who have no business being promoted. They getting all the money. They ain't got no business getting the money. They are not as skilled as you, but it is what it is. We got to rage against the machine. And we all, as individuals, have to do our part. I reach back. I use my frat brothers. I use my organizations that I'm in. Look, if we don't reach back and help folks, we are not doing our part. Right. So I try to reach up, but I also got to reach back. Right. So it is incumbent upon us to do this damn thing. Right. Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it for us?
Right.
So that's what I'll leave with you guys. I have so much more, but you know, I'll leave with that.
We doing more. Kenneth said I'm doing more. So this has been so good. Margaret.
I get to go after Demetrius. So yeah, I mean, we're from different places, but you know I love you, right?
About that.
We're saying the same. We're just using different language, but I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, we are.
you know, I do think this is definitely a long haul fight. People have been fighting it for a very long time. I do think now there is an opportunity to do something deeper and go a little deeper now if we're smart about it and we're strategic and we lock arms, you know. And I think going back to earlier comment about you know, really standing together and allyship, I think we have to do that more. And I think, you know, we can't you know, breach the barrier alone. We have to do that together. And so, you know, I'm encouraged by this panel and the folks on this panel, because we're all warriors in this fight. So fight on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Margaret. Appreciate it. My son is knocking at the door, but it's okay. Just stay with us. You know, take care of kids, and he'll come in here and he will take over the show. But Crystle, real quick, your turn.
Thank you so much. So first I want to say thank you for inviting me to be on this panel, and for everyone else who joined. But what I'll say is, remember that you have choices and you have options. So as you're considering what companies you want to work for, decide what your values are and what you want out of a company. And if that company isn't offering you that, feel comfortable with passing on it. And if you're very strategic about what it is that you want in an organization, you will have target companies and you will have lots of options. So don't settle for less than you deserve.
Awesome. I love it, Crystle. Thank you so much. Giselle.
So let's see, closing thoughts. Stand for something, whatever that is, that's important to you, and keep your feet grounded to the earth on what that is, so that you can look back in 20, 30, 40 years and still say that you are still authentically who you are, even as you evolve through obstacles, through challenges, through growth. I think that authenticity is critical, and be a vessel, be loved, be liked, make a difference. We all have the ability to make a difference, even if it's in one individual's life, regardless of what our situation is, what our title is, what our education is. You know, this journey for me really started as like getting people jobs, right? Just access and opportunity to getting people jobs. And now I'm just like, bump the jobs. If that's what happens out of all of this, then great. But at minimum, I want to be someone that you can count on as a resource, as a support that you can lean on. And I'm right now, like my personal bucket list and mission is like, I want to talk to every Black and brown person in America. I want to talk to anybody and everyone that feels underserved, underrepresented, disenfranchised, and help support you in any way that I can. And if that brings you, if the right journey for you is an opportunity at TikTok, because that's where I happen to be right now, then great. But at minimum, if it's just you feeling like you have someone that believes in you, I'm a LinkedIn, you know, a DM away. And I mean that from the bottom of my soul. This is what I spend all of my time doing. So.
Wow. Powerful. Crystle, you need to bring her on your show.
Oh no, Crystle and I got so much work to do.
Yes, I already DM'd her in the background. I'm like, we have to be friends. You're everything.
Likewise.
I want to just thank everyone so much. Again, me and Demetrius have been friends for years, so that's like my brother to another mother, all that good stuff. Me and Giselle, we had I still remember at CA, we had that conversation. When I tell you, I don't know if you have this conversation with people, and it's just it really was a spiritual moment. That's how I look at it. It was like one of those, it was like a spiritual, like a real, like when you go on a retreat or something. It was like one of those moments, like a 45-minute conversation. Had a chance to talk to Margaret. You were awesome. We connected as well, and look forward to building more relationships with you as well. And Crystle, I followed you, so I see your post all the time. You have such wonderful work that you do, and I'm definitely look forward to staying in contact with you. Special member in Texas. And then Kenneth, you know, you're the man, you know, you're doing it all, man. So I love what you're doing. And now that I'm ever in Harlem, I've never been to that restaurant, Demetrius. So if I'm out there, I need to check it out. But
brother, I'm trying to tell you.
Hey, look, they got tables for 3. We can do it.
Let's do it.
I'm in Florida right now, so they put a ban on us to New York. So, but that's a whole other discussion. But either way, I want to just thank y'all so much, man. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you, Kenneth, for the words and the motivation, the accountability. You do get tired. You have a lot of things going on, but when something's going good, you got to keep going and keep going. So I'm gonna take you on your word, Kenneth, and figure out how to do 2 a month. So just thank you so much for that. Thank you all so much for staying with us this long. It's literally 4 minutes over, but again, I had one question. I never got back to it again, but that's what happens, right? In these conversations about diversity, inclusion, and equity, there's so much to talk about. So I hope you were able to grab all the important information that was necessary. And my only thing is that, number one, you keep doing the work wherever you're at. We all have to be unified in doing our individual part to help to eradicate the injustices that are going on in our society. And so my hope that you first and foremost do your part wherever you're at, do your part. And here comes, I don't think it's selfish, I think it's valuable. But secondly, tell everyone about the Circle of Change virtual conference in in November and December. Spread the word. Again, I'm hoping these panelists will be a part of that, and so many other people. It's really going to be transformational. As all of you know, our target is culturally diverse students and first-generation students. And so please get the word out there. I think students need it. I think it's important. Obviously, share this with people, share it with professionals, and all that wonderful stuff as well. But again, thank you all so much. Thank you for taking time to be here for this long. Y'all have a blessed rest of the week. I'll definitely be in contact. Again, anything you ever need from me, feel free to reach out. Have a great time, everyone. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.